Good afternoon. Today you will learn about Russia's attack on NATO, confiscation of frozen Russian assets, as well as discuss the results of the conference in Davos and other no less interesting events that occurred on January 15th. Let's start with the situation on the Ukrainian front. The Russian army continues active assault operations in the southeastern direction with the use of aircraft and armored vehicles. The situation is most difficult in the Avdiivka and Mariinka directions. Over the past 24 hours, 41 airstrikes and 51 offensive attempts supported by armored vehicles were recorded. The average daily number of clashes has been around 50 for a week already, and for the last 3 days aviation has been actively used. Ukrainian blogs say that the Russians are becoming more active on many parts of the front, as well as the accumulation of equipment and manpower. The second half of winter will be difficult. We think it is now clear to everyone. The Russians have advanced east of Makiivka in the Sverdlovsk direction. Fighting for control of Stepno continues near Avdiivka, to the south, near Novomykhailivka. The situation is critical, as the Russians are advancing from the north, east and south. In the Kherson region, ice on the Dnieper River made it difficult to cross to the AFU bridgehead in Krinky. Images with boats slowly making their way through the ice floes are published by military telegram channels. It is obvious that in such conditions the supply of the bridgehead will be complicated. Boats need more time to swim to the left bank of the Dnieper. It also increases the risk of being hit by the Russians, who are actively using both drones and artillery to hit the boats. In terms of military prospects for a Russian offensive in the near future, Sergei Peresledyan said that Russian forces will launch a large-scale offensive in Ukraine sometime between January 12 and February 2, when the ground freezes and probably after Ukrainian forces tire of defending their positions in Avdiivka and on the left bank of the Kherson region. Ukrainian authorities continue to talk about an influx of fresh forces into the Russian army. According to the GUR, about 30,000 people volunteer for the Russian army every month. This is about 1,000 to 1,100 people a day, with the help of which the Russian Federation replenishes losses and forms reserve regiments. The motivation for Russians to join the army is salary. Especially in crisis regions where there are either low salaries or no jobs at all, Russian prisoners of war frankly admit that they went into the army because it pays there, and he has a mortgage, family and so on. And this motive is by far the main one for those people who voluntarily go to mobilization, sign contracts and fight. According to the GUR, the salaries of Russians fighting in Ukraine are about $2,500 to $2,800 a month. For a day of fighting there is a supplement of 8,000 rubles to the salary. Meanwhile, the Western media are discussing the Russians' new missile campaign in Ukraine. The Financial Times writes that the scale and complexity of Russia's latest airstrikes differ from last winter's attacks. Increasingly, the main targets are Ukrainian defense facilities such as Artem, rather than the energy grid that Russia tried to destroy last winter. The attacks were carefully planned, using waves of drones and missiles designed to crush Ukraine's air defenses. To breach Ukraine's air defenses, Russia typically launches slow-flying drones first, then low-flying subsonic cruise missiles and finally ballistic missiles that fall toward the target at the speed of sound, making them difficult to hit. The Russians are trying to crack Ukraine's air defense code. If they succeed and Ukraine is unable to defend its skies, it will be a huge problem because it will open the door for Russia to send in heavy bombers. Ukraine's mix of air defense systems and surface-to-air missiles, dubbed Frankensam, has struggled to deal with these attacks. The combined use of hypersonic and subsonic weapons has made it difficult for Ukraine to prioritize air defense targets. The German newspaper Bild released a sensational article yesterday that the German army is preparing for an armed conflict against Russia. A possible escalation of relations between NATO and Russia could take place as early as February this year. This is a training scenario that describes step by step, month by month, how Vladimir Putin will act and how NATO will have to defend itself. In this Bundeswehr scenario, the escalation will begin in just a few weeks. Soon after, tens of thousands of German soldiers will have to be sent into battle. In the scenario the paper describes, Russia launches another wave of mobilization and conscripts an additional 200,000 men into the army in February 2024. In spring, the Kremlin will launch a large-scale offensive in Ukraine and defeat the AFU by June 2024 amid insufficient support from the West. Further, according to this scenario, Russia will provoke aggression against ethnic Russian minorities in the Baltics. Clashes will begin, which Russia will use in September as an excuse to hold a major exercise Zapad 2024 involving 50,000 soldiers in western Russia and Belarus. In October 2024, Russia will move troops and medium-range missiles to Kaliningrad to strike the Suwałki corridor, which connects the Kaliningrad region to Belarus via Lithuania. In December, right after the U.S. elections, there could be border conflict and unrest there. The Russian Federation will try to take advantage of the fact that the political system in the United States may be paralyzed. In January 2025, Poland and the Baltic states will convene a meeting of the NATO Council and declare an increased threat from Russia, which in March will move additional troops to Belarus and the Baltic borders. In May 2025, NATO will decide on measures for credible deterrence to prevent Russia from attacking the Suwałki corridor from both sides, Belarus and Kaliningrad. On Day X, according to a secret Bundeswehr document, NATO's commander-in-chief will order 300,000 soldiers, including 30,000 Bundeswehr troops, to be deployed to the eastern flank. This scenario will probably be considered as a legend of NATO exercises. Let us remind you that in 2024 the largest exercises of the alliance after the Cold War should take place. They will be held just in the Baltic region. Considering different scenarios, even if they are highly unlikely, is part of everyday military business, especially in training. That is, in this case we are not talking about the information that Russia has already prepared a plan of attack on NATO countries, but about the legend of the upcoming exercises, during which the reflection of a hypothetical Russian attack in the area of the Suwałki corridor will be practiced. This, in fact, was confirmed the next day in NATO. Director of the Alliance's Center of Excellence Janis Sarts said that this is not a secret intelligence analysis predicting the situation, but the scenario of the upcoming exercises. Let's still talk about the Davos Forum. The head of the office of the president, Andriy Yermak, said that Ukraine is winning this war and Zelensky will never go to freeze it. Judging by the assessments of the Western press, this meeting did not make much progress. Negotiations on a peace plan for Ukraine in Davos ended without a clear path forward for Western national security officials who attended the talks. The main achievement was simple: a larger and more diverse joint picture than last time. Representatives from 83 countries were present, including 18 from Asia and 12 from Africa. At the previous such meeting in Malta in October, there were 65 countries, but the decision by China, Moscow's most important ally, not to participate undermined the event. The sentiments of the neutral countries have not changed. They call for a halt to the war and negotiations, during which the rest of the issues, including territorial ones, can be resolved, whereas Ukraine demands a settlement. In the reverse order, first return the territories to it and then negotiate, which the Russian Federation does not agree to. Meanwhile, today Vladimir Zelensky arrived in Switzerland and announced an agreement with the president of this country that it will host a summit of world leaders to discuss a peace formula. But what leaders of what countries will actually come to this event, and whether any concrete decisions will be made there, is still unclear. Thanks to everyone who watched this video. If you want to stay up to date and get the latest news, then subscribe to our channel and click on the bell not to miss new releases.